Welcome to the Life of Phys Podcast, a place for artists to share their creative journey, discuss mental health, and the importance of building a positive community. I'm your host, Tyson Martin, and on this episode I have Ryan HK, a photographer based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Ryan has been in the game for over 20 years. He is a cancer survivor, shoots corporate and portraiture, loves the science of lighting. He is open about his mental health and why building a positive community is the way forward. Now let's get to the show.
I'm Ryan HK, photographer based in Calgary, Alberta currently, previously like Western Canada, I guess. I used to spend a lot of time traveling for photography prior to the pandemic.
Let's talk about the pandemic. You were a working photographer, obviously. As a working photographer, how badly did the pandemic affect you?
It was pretty crazy. So in like quick predecessor to that, I guess, in 2016, I was diagnosed with cancer and did chemo, had operation, whatever, and did chemo in 2017 for most of the year, and then kind of got my life in order, but also had like that midlife crisis slash post cancer. What should I do? And so I sold my house. I donated all my furniture. I bought a camper for my truck, and I went and toured BC and Vancouver Island. And then I bought a sailboat, and I was living on the sailboat. And I think I was on this sailboat, man, not even like 2 months, and the pandemic hit. And so jokingly, it was the best place in the world to be because I saw less than 5 people a week. But I had kind of, after that year of chemo and just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, I had decided to like semi-retire and figure out where I was going to go and what I was going to do, because spending a year, let's say a year and a half, actually not shooting because you're too sick to do anything. My photography business kind of collapsed in Calgary, and I figured, well, I don't really want to live here if I don't have a photography business. So I moved out there, and I'd spent about a year there rebuilding my photography business, and was just kind of doing like environmental portraiture, working with a lot of small brands. And then I was driving or flying back here for my, like, the few clients I still had. And luckily, like, they were pretty understanding. There were some that weren't. I get it. You got to have images and you got to have content. But yeah, that pandemic hit, and the very first thing that gets cut is usually photo and video, because they're expensive. And it's an easy line item to cut away and use older stock or shoot with a phone or shoot on the cheap. So luckily, the cost of living on a sailboat is generally very little. You know, I was fishing for food and crab and going to farms to buy vegetables and that kind of stuff. And the thing I think that the pandemic helped me do, oddly enough, was like really fall in love with photography again. So I was up to being diagnosed, I was very busy, like almost, I won't say too busy, but it was overwhelming. And then I got sick and couldn't work and couldn't do anything. But the pandemic, basically that whole island, I mean, everywhere shut down. I was able to just kind of focus on what I felt like shooting. And I'd grab a single body and go for, a 10 or 12 or 15 kilometer walk. I shot mostly film almost the entire pandemic, other than commercial jobs back in Calgary that required digital. And I just kind of figured out what I loved about photography again and what I didn't love and what I didn't want to do, because before I got diagnosed, I was taking like as much work as humanly possible. And as great as it was as a revenue stream, it can be soul crushing if you are shooting stuff you don't really want. And I didn't struggle to do this, to not enjoy what I'm shooting. And like at the start of my career, I honestly, like, I was shooting real estate agents. I was doing houses. I was doing Christmas parties. I was doing bat mitzvahs. I was doing weddings. I was like, you want to pay me to push a button on a camera? I'm in. And then as you develop your skill set and you figure out what you want to do and what you don't want to do, I kind of moved out of weddings. I moved out of that like corporate portraits. I moved out of events altogether. And by the year I got diagnosed with 2016, I was only doing like commercial and advertising work, and then commissioned portrait series. So I developed like a very distinct look, I guess, that people liked. So I would do single portrait sessions for people, but generally it was all advertising and commercial. And then I was still actually working once in a while as like a DIT as well. So like a digital imaging technician on sets for other commercial photographers. I always liked being really busy, to my own detriment back then, I guess.
Yeah. So are you cancer free now?
In remission 5 years now, baby.
Fuck yeah, brother. I'm super happy to hear that. Cancer's a bitch. And I'm glad to hear you beat it.
Yeah, man. It took my dad. So I was like, and my dog. So I went into remission, and then my dog died from cancer. And I was like, well, I suppose it's better you than me, but that still sucks.
Oh, man. Losing your dog is like so gut wrenching.
Yeah.
I lost my puppy a year ago, Christmas time. So on the 27th of December. Your look is very, very unique. I'm actually looking at it right now. I love your motorcycle series.
Thanks.
I'm a huge fan of motorcycles, and just the way you've captured them, it makes me want to go ride. What's your favorite aspect of the photography you do to shoot? Is it the portrait sessions? Do you like incorporating props like motorcycles, things like that? Or do you like working for clients, like big clients, like distilleries and in the movie industry?
So if revenue was no object, like if I won the lottery tomorrow, I think I would just focus on environmental portraits. And I think my love of motorcycle and custom cars, and I lived in that world for a long time anyway, and just kind of was playing with cameras. I mean, I was a photographer, but I wasn't where I am now. And I was able to kind of combine those passions. But because of my love for cars and bikes, and the people I met through that industry, I was given access to some pretty cool projects and people that like build stuff. And that's where I sort of developed an aesthetic, was in that like motorcycle community. And it was amazing. I think like working with like larger brands is fun. It's stressful. There's a lot on the line, but the teams you get to work with are amazing. Like I have DITs and assistants and grips that I work with regularly. I've had the same 2 producers for the last couple of years, and they've been incredible. And you get to travel. Like I sure as shit wouldn't. Oh, am I allowed to swear? Yeah, sure.
Swear it up, man.
Yeah. Okay. I always feel bad. I always feel bad.
I click the little explicit box when I upload.
Okay.
Just because let people know that it's free run. I'm not right now. At least I don't have anybody who supports this. It's sponsored by me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get to set the rules.
Yeah, man. I just want people to be themselves. I swear like a sailor. I try hard not to when I'm doing this, but it comes out. So let her fly, man.
I'm so bad. But yeah, I mean, it's really, even when I was working as like an assistant, I was able to travel a fair amount on like bigger commercial jobs, being like a first assistant or a DIT or a cam op or whatever. And then like as you build your brand or career, whatever you want to call it, I've always been really lucky in being able to travel a fair amount. Like I definitely wouldn't have had the money to go places often as I have. Like thanks to the motorcycle community, I ended up traveling a lot to shoot motorcycles, which was kind of my favorite thing originally. Now I'm creating large format portraits, tighter portrait work, and then small, like intimate environmental portraits. So I've been working on this series for I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years, just bits and pieces here and there. And it's like makers. So it's people that use their hands to create. So silversmiths, motorcycle builders, jewelers, carpenters, that leather workers, like that kind of stuff. And I think to me, that's the coolest thing ever, is someone that has a craft that you can then tell a story in 2 images. And that's usually my goal, is one image of them in their environment and then one very tight portrait. And that series started a number of years ago on film, because I was just getting back into shooting film because I'm old. So I grew up shooting film in the what we call the late 1900s now.
Isn't that weird? Like, people look at me, I'm turning 50 this year. So people look at me and they're like, "You were alive when?" I'm like, yeah, the 70s.
Yeah, man. Oh, like I learned on film and I shot film forever. And then I fought the digital transition. Like, I still shot film. Magazines wouldn't take digital in the beginning because they were like 3 megapixel. And then when they got to 6 megapixel, they were starting to take them, but I was still shooting a lot of film because you could just, like, there was a place here in town, Photo Nova, something like that. They did really good drum scans. So you'd get these amazing drum scans to send to the magazines instead of these shitty little Nikon D70 files. So I fought that, and then I abandoned film to just digital. Then I missed it. Then I went back and just back, like, man, just like sitting on the fence forever. And now, like, almost all my personal work is shot on film. And then my large format portrait specialized sessions, commissioned portraits is what I call them. Those are all 8x10. So I sold my 4x5. Really? Yeah. I sold all of my 120 kits, my fridge full of 120 film. So now I only have 35 and 8x10, which is so stupid. Like, I mean, it's great for travel. I bring my 2 35 mil bodies and just like wander around. It's cool and they're tiny. But then if I want something that I want to print or contact print, well, you can see like that's for cyanotypes behind me, which, sorry, listeners, but there's a giant UV light set up in my office. So I do cyanotype contact prints from 8x10 negs for people when they do a portrait session. And, I made that move into 8x10 maybe like a year and a half ago from 4x5, just because I wanted to get into contact printing. I wanted to get into platinum palladium. Unfortunately, it's $1 bajillion a print now. So I'm not doing that, but I am fucking around with cyanotype, which is really cool because that technology is from the late 1800s, I guess. Someone will correct me here, but it's old as fuck. And it's still cool that I can sit in a very modern condo, paint some paper, drop it on, and then have a print and wash it and be like, yeah, I made that. That's the only one in existence, because the second one, not going to be identical to that one either. But I'm torn between those two worlds because I also love the perfection of digital, and I'm very, we'll say, obsessive about my lighting. And when it's digital, it has to be perfect. But when I shoot film, I'm like, I like this little bit of character. I like this little bit of whatever. So I live in these two worlds that often fight with each other.
That's my struggle. I came into this game not super long ago, so film was never really in my ballpark. It wasn't something I thought about. The only film I knew was back in my skateboard days. People took photos of me on film cameras. That's all I knew. Now I have a Hasselblad 500 that I'm scared to use.
So that, oddly enough, is the only film camera I have ever regretted selling. And I shot with a 500C, 3 backs and 3 lenses forever, like skateboard work, snowboard, everything, portraits, all, like everything and anything was that camera. And my Nikon F4S, which I've had since 1997, I think I bought that body. So it's had thousands of rolls through it. It's actually just like in the next room over in a bag. I'll never get rid of that. That was the first pro body I ever bought. But I sold that 500C kit to fund a Hasselblad H1 because I had decided like I was going new and it was going to be amazing and it was going to be so great. And then from the H1, I went to an H3D31 to an H4D50. And then I got rid of my H4D50 2 summers ago. And it's like, I should buy another 500C. But then I went to 8x10 instead and was like, yeah, fuck it. I'm just going to have this giant camera that is too big to fly carry on. And so I can't really bring it anywhere that I'm not driving because I will not put that thing underneath an airplane.
Heck no. Yeah, your lighting. I'm looking at your portrait work right now. I mean, your lighting it's second to none, my friend. It's yeah, it's some of the listeners don't know. The people that are on the podcast are people that I admire, that I respect, that their work speaks to me. So Ryan's work spoke to me the minute I actually found him on Threads. I saw his work and I was like, holy fuck. And I looked at it and then I put up a post asking for portrait help. And Ryan was one of the first people to reach out and say, hey man, what do you need? And that's super important. That's part of the whole community aspect of photography that I love. You want to spill your secret sauce here, man? You want to let the viewers know what you do to make these photos pop like this?
Yeah, I think the one thing I'll like add to that, the community aspect is I almost always had someone willing to help me like when I was learning, but I did interact with those that didn't want to help you, and that shit sucks. Like the condescending gatekeeping pieces of shit that are just like, get the fuck out of my industry, can eat a bag of shit and get hit by a bus. Like there's no time for that. Just be a good person and help people out. And like that love you feel for photography, like if you can't share that, get a counselor. Like there's obviously something deeper that has some insecurity issues or whatever. But like I was an asshole when I was younger, and I get it. And like it probably took coming close to dying to shift this perspective, I guess. But it was just one of those things like, yeah, man, be fucking nice. And that's it. And now I'm lucky enough, like on the sets that I'm on and the shoots that I'm on, like I was talking about this in the studio the other day, is I'll take someone with less skill over an asshole that knows everything every day of the week, man. I've done this long enough that I need that love and I need that camaraderie and I need that like photo family on set. So if people have questions, if people have anything, 100%, I'm going to support them, because both I've had that support and I've been on the other side of it where someone sucks and you're like, oh, but I just had a question of like, how did you get that look? And, you get a shitty answer from them. So I think community is super important, especially like in today's day and age when, there's more photographs created. I don't know. You'd have to look at the stats. I'm going to make shit up like every day than there were for the first couple, decades of photography. So yeah, as far as the lighting goes, I don't know, man. I'm like a discount shitty wannabe Karsh, I guess. Like I love that man's look so much. Obviously it's a podcast, so you can't see, but like above me, like giant Karsh coffee table books. I've been obsessed with his work for a really long time. George Harrell, Vincent Peters, like there's so many phenomenal portrait photographers. And I had a shoot in LA, I don't know, we'll call it 7 years ago now, because who the fuck knows, but that era. And I was chatting with the client, who's now one of my closest friends. And I said, are you up for an idea? And he's like, yeah, man, whatever. And so I pitched him this portrait idea I had in his shop in down. So he builds custom motorcycles, and he had like an 8,000 square foot shop downtown LA. And there's like a chunk of the shop that was kind of open, and it was a like shitty cement floor and a shitty brick wall. And we were hanging out the night before talking about it, and we were watching Gangs of New York. And he was like, you know what I want to do? I want to do like the butcher portrait after the fight, like where he's sitting in the chair with the American flag. I want something like that. And I was like, yeah, man, let's So that was
I'm
the
looking at it
start
right
of,
now.
yeah, that was the start of my like lighting journey, was talking to Locke and him and I working out, the aesthetic and everything. And I had brought, at that time, I brought, I think, every light that I owned, which was, I think, 5 or 6 lights down. And I was like, yeah, man, just, I'll light it. You can keep working and I'll call you down. But the only thing he didn't have was an American flag. So I took one of his choppers to, I don't know, Home Depot, something like that. Anyway, I found an American flag for a reasonable price that was big enough to work. Um, and I bought it and I rode back to the shop and he was busy working. And you can't really you can't throw a shiny brand new American flag into a photograph that's supposed to have like that. Like it's just too bright and clean and, I don't know, just wouldn't look right. So I dunked it in some oil and then I tied it behind the motorcycle and I rode the motorcycle around the back alley of the shop, dragging the flag around. And then I put the flag in the corner where there's a bunch of dirt and I stomped it. And then we wrapped it around an anvil and he forged part of a knife over top of it. And so in this 4-hour period, I aged that flag, which, probably super illegal to do that to an American flag, but shit, did it look good when we were done. The flag still hangs in his shop, actually, which is funny. And everyone asks how old it is. And he's like, a few years, just aged it for the photo. But yeah, I took that old chair of his, which was like one that he used to have up in his office, and popped it in front of the wall. And it's a shop, so it's high fluorescence, like gross lighting. And all I did was figure out the lighting, and I was shooting on a phase 1 with leaf shutter back then, so I could easily knock the ambient out of that shop so it didn't exist, but I could still focus, so I could use the fluorescence to focus. And then just one light at a time by myself, no assistant, because I flew down there on my own. Took me 45 minutes, maybe an hour to set that lighting up. And then he got changed, he came down, and I got that shot in 10 minutes. And then he went back to work. I loaded them into my computer. And that was the first time I really tried to shape light and tell story with light, as opposed to just throwing 4 or 5 lights in and being like, yeah, there's a lot of light in here, but I don't really know what I'm doing. So that was the first one where I really took my time. And when I pulled them into Capture One, I was just like, these look very different than anything I've ever shot before. And that was it. I was hooked. That was okay, so I guess this is who I'm going to be now. And I shot that super old phase 1. Yeah, I know, phase 1, but it was shitty and old. You probably would have spent more getting a Sony A7R back then than you would have if you bought that phase used. But I shot that for years and I spent all my money on lighting instead. And that's sort of what I did. Was I had access to people in the motorcycle community and the hot rod community and the classic car community. And I was just like, hey man, do you want a portrait of your really cool car? It's free. Just let me fuck with lighting and give me an hour of your time. And most people were really good about it. And then through that, I got hooked up with other motorcycle builders and that kind of stuff. So I had access to a lot of really cool people. And that's sort of that portrait of Locke is where I was hooked again, because I was just I was making a living in photography, but I was just shooting whatever. And then that was this is the direction I want to go. And so I pushed that way, and I built my business on that side. I used to shoot a lot of editorial and a lot of those kind of portraits and commercial stuff for smaller shops. But yeah, man, the lighting thing is shadows more important than light, I guess. I'm going to get roasted for saying, but really that's where all your depth comes from, right? Is shadow. And I know people that are like, yeah, I used 5 lights in this. And you're like, you could have used one through a 5x7 frame and it would have looked the same. And I think you need that contrast, I guess I would say, to give that extra dimension to the photos, to really kind of I don't know, shape. I just say shape light. That's what it is. For anyone that's not into lighting and is looking at getting into it, Man, speed lights work. I traveled for years. That portrait of Locke is 1 pro photo and 4 speed lights because they were just, I could have 2 carry-ons and my motorcycle helmet and I could fly to LA. And I was flying to LA like every, I don't know, say 8 to 10 weeks to shoot for anywhere between 3 and 5 to 7 days, just depended on what we were doing. Now I can't stand them, but that's only because I'm spoiled. I mean, my speed lights now are Godok's AD100s because they're like, they kind of take up the same amount of space in a bag, but they have an insane more output and the modifiers work better with them and the light's more consistent. The recharge rate is faster. I mean, it's technology, man. That was 7 years ago. AD100s didn't exist.
Anybody who wants to check out those portraits, ryanhk.com. I highly recommend you check his website. His work is fantastic. I would one day like to have a lesson on how to set it up and do that. I struggle with light, so my style is always like you, fluctuated. It's gone. For me, I started wanting to shoot water, long exposure water, moved to wildlife, left and went into landscape. I love gritty, grimy street now. That's what I want to shoot. A lot of people think it's weird that I chose a GFX 50R to be my street camera, but you can't doubt the images coming out of it. They produce, and it gives me the ability to expand.
Yeah.
What's your current setup, Ryan?
Depends on the job, which sounds like an asshole thing to say. My go-to right now for like most of my like commercial and advertising work is an old GFX 100 and then a smattering of lenses for that thing. And then my like personal camera that I probably use the most is a Leica M10 monochrome. And then my Leica M4 II is my like, those two are my like travel, like I bring them everywhere. And then my 8x10 is for commissioned portraits. When I first got it, I was like shooting landscapes and stuff, but dude, $20 every exposure. You're like, is this worth taking a photo of? And I was so cheap and so indecisive that I was like, nah, it's not worth fucking $20. Oh, the mountains are great. Pull over here. Let's just see. And you set the camera and you're like, nah, it's not really worth it either. And you can't tell until you look through the ground glass. And so I do miss my 4x5 for that because it was a couple bucks a sheet and you're like, yeah, fuck it. Click, click, click. Great. But yeah, now my 8x10 is just sort of commissioned portraits and that kind of stuff. But I want to get into shooting more with it again. But yeah, the GFX I've only had since early August last year, late July, I think. So I was shooting in the Leica SL system before that. So I had an original SL Type 601, and then I had 2 SL2s, and they were fucking disasters. They were the most unreliable camera I have ever used in 35 years. Images, amazing. The feel of the bodies, amazing. The viewfinder, incredible. The fact that they crash 5 times a day, not awesome, especially when you're in the middle of nowhere in Montana and you have 3 bodies with you and you're like, well, let's hope fucking only 2 of them die. And yeah, they would brick all the time, man. Like mid-shoot, I was shooting, the final straw was shooting, I was working on a documentary with some sculptors from Mexico, and we were filming in the studio, and I used to run video on them as well because it was just easy to have one Pelican to travel. And anyway, the subject was talking about the cartel murdering his brother, and it bricked. And I had to just say like, oh, hold that thought about your brother. I'm so sorry. And then my assistant ran over, grabbed like a new battery because they used to they just freeze, and usually a battery swap would do it even when the battery wasn't dead. That didn't work. So it took a few minutes of like just fucking with it to get it up and running again. And then once it was, we redid that question, which had nowhere near as much impact as the one where he was originally talking about it. So that was the day I was done with that system. And I sent one of them away to Leica before that. So it went to Germany. It took 17 weeks to get back. And then it was still having issues. And so I was like, hey guys, it still has this error when the battery gets to like 60%. And their reply was just buy more batteries. And those batteries are $400 a piece, and I owned 11 of them. So I could have bought a Lumix or a Canon. I could have bought another camera body for what I had invested. So I took a bath, man. I lost so much money selling those kits, but I was so mad. But I love the M10M too much to sell it. So I'll give them that. And my 1979 M4 II, I've had, probably 1,000 rolls through it. I've had it serviced a couple times. I just turned it pink a couple weeks ago, which really pissed some people off, which was awesome. But yeah, sorry, that's a long-winded. Currently, it is the Fujifilm GFX 100. That's what I usually shoot. I have a couple GFX 100 Mark IIs coming eventually, just not right now. I don't need them. That 100 works great, but that'll be the next upgrade path, just from a video standpoint, because once again, I'm back into 2 Pelicans for work, which I don't like. Dude, I want to have one rolling bag and like a lens bag.
Yeah.
And that's it. Because right now I typically have like Shimoda DV Roller XL, which has the GFX and all of its lenses. And then I'll either have I have a Shimoda backpack that has like my laptop and tethering kit in it. And then if we're shooting some other stuff, I'll have like my anamorphics or whatever the day calls for. I have too much gear. I just went through my gear cabinet like last week, and literally on my couch or little chair in my office, there's 2 boxes that are enormous with gear that I'm like, I should get rid of this. I found lenses I forgot I owned. That's so bad. Because I just like put them in the cabinet, and I've had 7 concussions. So I'm just like, and I go through the cabinet to find a filter, and I'm like, what? I have a 100 mil 2x macro? Oh, I do. Okay, I should sell this because I was unaware I still had this. I just found five Leica batteries the other day, and I was like, oh, I should definitely try and sell these. I don't own a camera that these fit in. It's so bad. I'm such a gear whore, but I love it. Like, for a long time, I used gear as motivation to shoot. So for me, yes, it's a tool, and it doesn't really matter the tool, but if you enjoy the tool, that, to me, if I enjoy the tool, my work shows through a little more because I like shooting with it. Like, I shot with a Canon R5 for a year and a bit, and amazing, super capable camera, unreal, great autofocus, phenomenal colors. The lens packages that Canon offers, like I shot on the 28 to 70 f2 basically for everything. Amazing. Did I love that camera? Fuck no. Did I enjoy shooting it? No. I love the files though, but it wasn't that like car or motorcycle that you love to drive somewhere. It was just like, yes, this is my Toyota Corolla from 1982 that will get me to work and back, which is fine because they work. But I would much rather, take the 1956 Ford F100 to the store and back, or, the old knucklehead, like whatever. I find at my age and where I'm at, I like to enjoy the tool as much as I do the shooting. And if that means like, I can't shoot shit with my GFX 100 if it's fast moving. There's no way. So I'll just go rent something like for that day. Like a couple days ago, I was ripping on the Sony A7R4 because it's better autofocus. It's still however many megapixels that thing is. And it was great. Never missed focus. Like, never had an issue, but I like shooting those things. And I was a Sony, it was before the artisan program, but I was like a Sony representative where I traveled around Western Canada and spoke at camera things. And it was awesome for the technology. And I have no ill will to, I don't love shooting them. I want to enjoy like the Fuji X series, even though it's crop sensor. I had an X Pro 1 forever and an X H1 or X1 XH1. Yeah. And I just like, I need to love that body. That's why I overpaid for a fucking M10 and an M4 II. Like, so stupid, but I like them. And I guess I'm at the age now where I'm like, well, it's my money. I'll spend it on what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I left Fuji. My first real camera was a XT3. So that puts you in the era where I started. Sold the X-T3 because everybody talked about how good the new Nikon mirrorless was going to be. So I got a Z7, and I loved the files. I loved the way that I could manipulate that file. I hated everything else about the camera. I didn't want to go shoot it. I would take my X-T10 every single time I left, and the Z7 would sit in my cabinet on my desk, and then I'd look at it and be like, I don't like this thing. So I got rid of it and went to an XH1. It was awesome. I loved it. I really liked going back. There's something about Fuji's tactile feel, maybe, that just feels good in the hand. It makes you really want to get out and shoot that camera. And I agree with you. If the gear makes you feel better and you're not hurting anybody by buying gear, get out and have a good time. Do what makes you want to shoot photos, right? I gotta feel good to capture anything. I love that. I love the way you explained it. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's true.
It's my business, and would my revenue stream be higher than reinvesting in a stupid fucking camera that only shoots black and white and doesn't have autofocus? Absolutely. But I really like shooting that thing. And it's not like I can't afford to feed the dog. And it's not like I can't afford where I live. And so it was just one of those, like, you know what? Fuck it. I want something that I want. So let's do it. And if I don't like it, I'll just flip it. And funny enough, I bought it used because there's no way you're convincing me to spend $13,000 on that body, 13,000 Canadian for Americans that are listening, on that body. There's no way. So I got it for a really good deal. And I was like, yeah, this is worth it. And I just looked on eBay because I was shooting on the street. I was just walking around one day shooting, and some guy was like, "Oh, are you interested in selling that?" And I was like, not really. He's like, "Well, I've seen them. They're sort of going for this much now." And I was like, "I don't think so. That seems really cheap." And then he's like, "Well, let me know." And, gave me his information. I was like, "Yeah, for sure." So I got home. I looked on eBay on like the sold, and I was like, "Oh, he offered me like $2,000 less than what they were selling for right now." But also they're selling for $2,000 more than I paid for it. And I was like, "Ooh, do I want to flip this right now and make money?" Nah, I'm still enjoying it. So instead, like an asshole, I bought a PL adapter and a Type 20 viewfinder so I can shoot anamorphic cine lenses on a monochrome sensor like an idiot. Because again, it's my money.
Actually sounds like a lot of fun.
It's real. So I brought it in. We were shooting at Beam of Visuals here, which is like a volume wall, like a big LED. So it's like how they shoot Mandalorian. And I was in there shooting earlier this week, and I brought it just for shits. Like, we weren't doing anything with it at all, but I was like, you know what? So I brought the anamorphics kit, and I brought the M10 and the PL adapter. And at the beginning of the day, once we were lit and we were waiting for the talent to show up, I just threw the 50 mil anamorphic on it and threw the viewfinder on and was fooling around, and I shot a couple frames. And even with that viewfinder, it is so tough to focus that thing, like without a real monitor, or like the focus peaking on the Leica doesn't work on that dead adapter. Like, you have to have either like encoded. Anyway, it was tough as shit to shoot it wide open. But the images look cool. There's something about like that. And because I'm in, I have an 8x10 and I have a contrast filter. So like yellow, orange, and red, and green and blue for the 8x10, I can use a step down ring, and I can put them on the front of the anamorphic. So I can actually control my contrast with the M10 monochrome and the anamorphics if I wanted to be real weird. So I'll do that eventually, but I've been playing with this Yashica Matte 124G that I found at an antique store last week because I apparently can't stop buying things. And you know what? It's been 2 weeks because I made that comment today when I was buying the microphone for this podcast. I've had that camera for 2 weeks. I've had a roll of film in it for almost the whole. I haven't shot 12 frames. And I said to the guy at the store today, like, I was like, I don't think this thing's my jam. Like, 2 weeks to shoot 12 frames seems. I used to shoot 12 frames of 8x10 in a week, and so it's nice. It's in great shape. I'll see if this test roll comes back and I'm like, I love this look, then sure, I'll keep it. But I'm like, I'll sell it and buy a couple boxes 8x10 film or something. And that's how much I know I don't really care about that camera. Is I develop all my own film, like whether it's black and white, ECN2, C41. The only shit I don't fuck with is slide film, because I'm impatient and I don't feel like my temperature could ever be that consistent. And slide film's finicky in developing, but I'm not even going to develop it. There's a place nearby and I was like, I'll just take it in and get it developed. And if it looks cool, then maybe. Yeah, man, I have to enjoy shooting. And to be fair, those film did that for me. Like I said, during the pandemic, like I wanted to shoot every day, and I was buying like 400-foot spools of cinema film and spooling it down to 100-foot and then putting it in my bulk loader and then loading. And I was shooting between 10 and 30 rolls a week during the pandemic, developing them myself. By the way, if you're developing film and you live on a boat, it sucks. You have no space. So I develop in the marina laundry room, and or when I was in the RV, I developed like in the bathroom at RV parks, or like use the camper if I had to. But yeah, man, I was just crushing film because I was buying short ends and expired reels from productions. So I was paying like 10 cents a foot. And there's only roughly, I don't know, someone checked the numbers, but I think it's like 5.5 feet to a 36 exposure roll. So it was 50 cents per roll. And I was doing all my own developing, and I would exhaust the shit out of chemistry. They're like, this batch is good for 18 rolls. You're like, cool, I'm on roll 50, but it's like 9 minutes per roll now. And the contrast goes to shit and you get color cast. But at that time I didn't care because I had bought that like a M42 when I sold my house. That was like my post-cancer spoiling myself, who gives a shit kind of present. And I overpaid for it because it was new old stock, so it had never been shot.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I got it from Camera West in Rancho Mirage, which is part of like a San Francisco. Anyway, it sucked. It was broken when it showed up. Like it couldn't. It had sat for so long, so I sent it back. They CLA'd it, brought it back, shot a couple rolls. It was fucked. Sent it back. They fixed it again, brought it back, and it's probably had maybe 500 rolls through it since then. No, way more than that. Anyway, doesn't matter. It was the driving force to get me interested in shooting for fun. Because prior to that, I was with Sony and I had, access to all this crazy gear, and I never just wanted to walk around with a camera. Like I just was like, yeah, I'll bring my camera. I don't really feel like it. Motorcycle trips and that kind of stuff, always had a camera. But like if we were just wandering around, never. Now, I don't think I would bet I rarely leave the house without a camera. Even if we're running errands, it's just like, you never know. We might stumble onto something.
I'm the same way. I always carry my Rico.
Yeah, those things are sweet. My brother bought one. He's like, it's pocket size if you have big pockets.
Yep. I always wear flannel, so I always put it in the upper pocket here.
Yeah.
Going back to how you're like, it's been 2 weeks and I haven't bought anything. I figured I had a problem when my manager at my local camera shop texted me to see if I was okay. So that that kind of goes with the same outlook. I'm not gear loyal. A lot of people are like, I only will shoot this. If something doesn't work for me and I'm bored of it, I get rid of it. And I'll try something different. Not afraid to try, but I always come back to Fuji, and the 50R has always been one of those dream bodies. And when I was finally able to secure it a month ago, I've been happily learning how slow it can be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I've back and forth. So like one of my first pro digital bodies was a Fuji S2 Pro, and then an S3 Pro, and then the S5 came out, but I didn't go that route. I don't know what that would have been then. I think that's when I moved to like the H3D 231, like the Hasselblad body. But after, however many years, my like carry around was an X Pro 1. And then my carry around was an XH1. And then, so I've always kind of like gone back, and I really like the shooting experience, which I know sounds stupid because it's just a fucking piece of metal. But again, that goes to like, why the hell do I ride a 70-year-old motorcycle? I mean, I could buy a brand new one for probably the same price, and it would have all the bells and whistles and it would be a lot easier and a lot better. And it doesn't really matter, but it's like, I'm old and I almost died. So I'm just going to do what I want to do now, as long as nobody gets hurt. So, and Fuji, to be honest, was amazing. When I went into the local, like the camera store, to look at replacing my SL2s, a friend of mine, Gary, who works there, was like, "Oh, you should try a GFX." And I was like, "Fuck that, man! I don't want a GFX." I was like, "They have tethering problems. They have this." He's like, "No, that was like the first gen 50S that had all the issues." He's like, we have a GFX 100. So they gave it to me for a week, and I brought it into this. I brought it into the studio, which Gary knows is the absolute worst for me, the best for him. And I think I shot it for like 2 days, and I was like, all right, and just fucking buy it. And so I bought it and a few lenses, and then I ditched my Leica stuff after making that switch. And then I used to host these like once a month. It was like pints and photography, because we weren't allowed to use beers and cameras because it's like a copyrighted thing. So I would open up the studio to the public, and I worked with the camera store, and they would throw it out on social media, and we would have like anywhere between 50 and 100 people that love photography come in. I worked with a local agency, House of Wild, and they would provide models for the night, and I would build like 3, maybe sometimes 4 lighting setups in the studio. And then 1 month Sony came out, then Fuji came out, and I chatted with the Fuji reps, and I had just made the switch, and he brought the 100 Mark II. So I got to play with it for a little bit, and they were awesome. They were super supportive, and I was kind of pissed because nobody knew that 102 was coming out, and I bought the 100 like literally 2 weeks earlier, and I was like, oh, what an awesome waste of money. But I still shoot that 100 because it's awesome. But yeah, I used to do these like little community events, and then a friend of mine works at a brewery, and they would sponsor, so everyone would get like, it was free. You'd just come, you'd hang out, you'd shoot models, you got 1 beer, and then sometimes Ian would show up with like 150 beers, and so everyone could have like 2 beers, and then you just kind of, it was a chance for people to try gear that they wouldn't be able to try. So we always like tried to bring a camera sponsor in, or a lighting sponsor, or someone that would bring gear for people to mess around with. And then House of Wild was always amazing, and they'd give us 3, 4, 5 models for 3 hours, which is pretty expensive, but it was just, nope, don't even worry about it, here you go. So it was just trying to like build a community post COVID, because we used to do those things and then we stopped doing it, and it was really important for me to give back a little bit. And I will say that this is the long-winded version. Fuji Canada was always amazing. Like Billy and Jeff would take time out of their days. Yeah. And they would come early. They would bring GFXs. They would bring, the XH2, like, dude, they would bring whatever they had. And then we had to give up that studio space, because the cost was more than doubling per month when our like arrangement was done. So I now shoot at Moss Studios, which is like right in like central Calgary, and those guys are awesome. So they've sort of agreed to step up and like do community events there. Yeah, so I hosted the GFX 102 launch with Fuji Canada at Moss, and House of Wild gave us like 4 or 5 models, and it was just an amazing experience. So Fuji's really been like very supportive of the community. And I know like everybody had, well, I don't see Canon doing it or Nikon anymore, but they used to. I mean, it's tough, right? Like, it's a competitive market space. And I mean, when you're as big as Canon and Nikon, I don't know if you really give a shit anymore. You can just do your Canon chasers of light or whatever the thing is called, but then they charge you to like go to them. Whereas we were like, yeah, fuck it. You don't have to pay anything, man. Come have a beer.
I met Billy. When did I meet him? Probably 6 or 7 months ago when the local camera shop here had a come out and try. Yeah. I loaded up the XT10 23 f2. I went down. They're like, "Oh, what camera do you want to try?" I'm like, "None. I'll shoot this today." And I said, well, "I'm going to talk to everybody. I'm going to talk to everybody that's here." And I've got 3 or 4 really good friends from that event because of my willingness to walk with people who are learning the camera system and just giving them the pointers when they're struggling. I love that stuff. That's for me, like having that community reach and that community feel makes everybody more excited for this craft. Let me know when you're doing your next event. I've got some family in Calgary, and maybe I can arrange a way to fly out and I'll come hang out. We'll do the event, and we'll do maybe a live broadcast.
So I'm
see how rad it is.
I'll be in Vancouver. I don't know what month is it now. February. How bad is that? It's just like I don't know. Sometime in 2024, in like a few months. So like you're in that area, right? Like
I'm just outside. I'm in Langley.
Yeah.
So just in the Fraser Valley.
But yeah, man, it's the community thing's great. And Billy, dude, that guy knows more than anyone I've ever met about Fuji stuff. Like it's crazy. And that's coming from someone who is technically obsessed. Like I was never creative. Like when I was learning, I was like f-stop, aperture, doing the math, and I love the math, and I like, oh yeah, that image is technically perfect, but it looks like shit because there's no fucking artistic value to it. But it was exactly where it was supposed to be in the zone system. And it's stupid. But like Billy knows his shit. So it was really cool to like chat with him and Jeff and their willingness to support and kind of give back to the community. And yeah, I get it. They're selling cameras. That's what you do. But Anthony from Sony, who's the like Western Canadian rep, he was the same, man. And I worked with Anthony for, I guess I was with Sony for like 6 years. And 5 years, 6, close to 6. And Anthony and I became really good friends. And that guy, same thing. You were like, hey, we're doing this event. We're going to like this little rodeo. And he'd be like, yeah, I'm coming with a Pelican full of camera gear. Don't even worry about it. And so, Sony really had that because they were kind of revived sort of consumer photography where people had like Rebels and they had like D70s or D90s and, it was fine, but that launch, what they did with mirrorless and high ISO and image stabilization was the like springboard for everybody else. And I remember taking Sony's out on jobs where our directors were like, what the fuck is that? And you're like, it's the future. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like the thing I will give Sony is like, it allowed me to shoot motorcycles in a way that I shot before, but my hit miss ratio was substantially reversed. So, back in the film days, you'd rip a roll of film in like riding shots and you'd hope to get 1 or 2. With the Sony, you just lay the hammer down, and with the IBIS, it would and you were good to go. Like I was stupid, and I used to actually just lock the throttle on my motorcycle and turn around on the seat and shoot back. So I should be dead on more than one occasion. But the Sony allowed me to like just, still keep a hand on the bar and just kind of look back over the screen and realize I didn't have to like support myself more with the camera. I could start shooting slower shutter speeds. I could start to get crazier, way more blurred backgrounds without using like plugins and stuff. And so I have to give it to Sony that they definitely like helped my technical abilities progress with their innovation in the industry. But then I got dumped for influencers, so I was real bitter. So I swore I'd never use their stuff again. But it is technically awesome. Like I said, I just shot that R4 for a job like the other day, and you're like, oh yeah, they are awesome, but they definitely are just like an 82 Corolla. You're like, it's a workhorse, but I don't love shooting it.
How do you feel photography aids your mental health? Like, do you find that if you're not being creative, you get cloudy? You said you suffered from some concussions. I suffer from them as well. And I find if I don't have time with my camera capturing what speaks to me, I suffer. I feel like, the world's over, the world's dark, it's gray. I'm not expressing myself. And that's my outlook when it comes to being under the mental health weather.
Yeah, I'm in that zone right now. Actually, my partner Denise, we were just talking about this, I don't know, last weekend, the beginning of this week. We talk about it a lot. Yeah, I'm in like a slump now, man. I haven't created an 8x10 portrait in months. I shot some magazine stuff that was kind of creative like 2 weekends ago, but my brain wasn't really like in it. I was happy with the images, but I don't know. I have these like, I think like everybody, you just have these like doubts and these periods of blah. Like, I don't, the anti-inspiration where you're like, no matter what you look at, I just can't get my jam back into like what I wanted to. And as someone who severely has had some real mental health issues in the past, as like someone who was at the top of the Malahat with their truck in drive pointed over the ocean and ended up, obviously I'm here today, so I didn't do it. But I was like seconds away from killing myself. Yeah, man, photography has always been that little bit of savior. And I mean, at that point, it was so bleak. There was no amount of photography that was bringing me back off that edge. But it has helped over the years to be creative. And they're not on my website anymore. I think you'd have to go to like, maybe 500 pics from ages ago to see them. But I had a series called Who's Laughing Now, and it was basically like this super dark series with clowns, because everybody fucking hates clowns. But to me, it was a lighting exercise, but it was also a way for me to just blow all these like negative, really dark feelings onto photo paper. So I was using those, and then you can see there's like a section of my portraits from 4 years ago, which was like right before the near miss. They're real dark. Like they're black and whites and they're of friends, but none of my friends look happy in them. And it was just like, I would purposely slow the pace of the portrait session down, and I would talk to them, and they were all very willing to speak quite frankly with me about it. And we would talk about mental health, and we would talk about the shitty state of the planet and just like general malaise, as it were. And you can see in some of those portraits, man, like I fucking love those portraits because there's so much emotion in them. But I also took the time to distract myself by lighting the ever living shit out of them. So like some of those are 7, 8, or 9 lights, and they all do something in the portrait. Like if you turned each one off, you'd see it shift in the thing. So the technical exercise was always great as a distraction for me because, like I said, I was always very technical. I wasn't very creative. And that was always like a great distraction, was like fucking math. And where do I want this light? What do I want this to do? And whatever. And then having friends that were open about it, man, and not having them be smiley and cheerful and wonderful in a photo. Have them thinking about how shitty things are. And you can see in some of them, like I asked those people to reflect on some not so awesome stuff. And it comes through. And I think like as a society now, it's so important that we talk about mental health because for a really long time, like as kids, man, there's no way we could talk about mental health. You're a crazy person.
Not at all, man. You couldn't even bring it up. You're being like, there's something wrong with me. And like, I don't know about you, but my dad would be like, suck it up. Dad, I just got another concussion. Like, what? I can't play football right now. I can't barely see. He's like, that's not a winner attitude. Get back out there. And, you were like, I'm not going to disappoint my dad. I'm at 23 major concussions. So I'm lucky to be standing. I'm likely not to be drooling. And like you, I've been in those same positions where I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it. For me, I decided my kids are worth it. Being a dad is super important. I've got lots of them. So But man, when you lose a job or you lose that career, you lose your money stream, and you don't know what's going to happen. That old mentality of keeping yourself bottled up isn't going to fix anybody. So I make it really well known, like to all of my friends. Doesn't matter what time it is. If you need me, call my phone. I'll come sit with you. We can chat. We can do whatever you need from me in this moment to help you understand that you're not alone. And that's a big part of it. Everybody feels alone in that time. We feel alone when we're at our darkest point. And the last thing I want to ever do is say, I'm sorry, I didn't answer my phone because I was sleeping. My friends' lives are worth more to me than sleep. I really want this community to be open enough to just say, I need help, man. Can somebody just listen to me? Because everybody's afraid to, oh, well, that goes against me being who I am. Everybody wants to be this or that or the other thing. I just want to be a good person. I just want to help people when I can help them. And I want people to be willing to help me when I need it. I just want to build a group of people that are ready to go. Somebody needs something, man, you got 10, 15 people ready. What do you need? You want to go drink a beer and just laugh about it? Let's go. You're feeling like you're going to hurt yourself? I'm here for you. What do you need from me? And it doesn't even have to be you being like, oh, I need you here now. But if I can sense you need me there now, I'm going to be there now. And that's where we need to head in everything, because you're going to get people who are just starting this craft and they're going to get told that they're not worth it, quit, you suck. And those are the assholes we want out of here. I want someone to be like, dude, look at this photo I took. And yeah, it may not be perfect. It may not be technical, but their excitement for it gets me excited for their career path, or even if it's not a career path, if it's just doing it for fun as a way of an outlet to express themselves, to get a better outlook on their own mental health, or to look inside themselves and be like, I really want to be this creative person. I'm all for that. I'm 100% behind them. I'm going to give them support, and I'm going to offer them a community feel.
Yeah. And I think having that community is super important. Like I never talked about it like for years, which probably led to that like bottling up and then eventually sitting at that point. And I now have like all of my friends I could definitely call, but I have like one friend in particular, and him and I talked about it, and we've both been in that similar situation. And now we just like randomly check in on each other, and it's like, hey buddy, how you doing? Like, good, just working. You good? Yep. You good? Yep. All right, great. And you like you back and forth, and yeah, having that support system, like now having a partner that is open to like talking about this kind of stuff, and who's also like had those low moments. And I think now that it's not as taboo to talk about it, because man, no one knew. I was always the funniest, friendliest, smiliest guy, and then I'd go home and just be like, I fucking hate everything. And really, like, think about it, dude, I get paid to play with a camera, and I was still pissy. And it was just like, well, I shouldn't be pissy because I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. And I fought really hard. But at the same time, I was like, nah, it still sucks though. Like, I struggled for 10 years. I had friends going on vacation and they were drinking every weekend and they were having a grand old time. And I was like, sorry guys, I have to choose whether I'm going to pay my phone bill or my visa this month because I need to be a photographer. And, you spend those 10 years stressing out about it, and it sucks a lot of the joy out of it. And you get stressed and you have a mortgage and you're like, well, I got to pay the mortgage every month. But so like things pile up, and you have, like, at the time, I didn't feel like I had the support system that I could talk about it. And now I openly talk about it because dude, I am in remission. I beat cancer that my dad didn't beat. My friends haven't beat. And then I'm going to go and kill myself a couple years after not dying from cancer. It's stupid. But at the time, I was like, you know what? No, this makes sense. And then, moment of clarity, it didn't make sense. And so I made a very substantial shift in my life and decided I wanted to focus on improving my situation. And I moved back to Calgary and I started to rebuild my photography business here. And it was kind of like I was back for a month and I was like, oh, I feel better. This situation is easier for me to cope. And it's not like there was no light switch, like I moved back here and everything was amazing. It was still like, do I want to take that exit? No, I'm okay this week. Okay. So for a long time, like I've been back almost 4 years now, I think. I don't know. No, it's 2024, pandemic, 3 years. And it was just like, yeah, it sucked. It was a struggle, but support and friends and everything else. And for me, it was, creating portraits and dark, moody shit and filming whatever, and like using that process, that creative process to work through it. Now I'm not in that like same emotional state, but I'm creatively tapped. And I was just like, I don't know what I want to shoot. And I don't know if it's because commercially I'm very busy shooting. It's not always super creative stuff, but I shoot so much right now that it's kind of like, well, I don't really want to, fuck it. I'll just bring the M10 and we'll go for a walk. And I like take photos of the tops of buildings or like weird little pockets of light. Cause I was just like, at least I'm pushing a shutter, which makes me feel better. I'm just racking up the actuations on that M10. So hopefully it's not like every other Leica product and dies an early death, but like I went to school for something completely different. And then I dropped out to snowboard, and I snowboarded for a living coached and taught and compete or film. And I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years, something like that. And then that was like where I was like, oh, I could probably make a living at photography because I was shooting so much snowboarding, and my brother and his buddies were far superior to me. So I could just at least hang out with the cool kids and photograph and, like, oh, look, I got published in a magazine. That's so cool. And then I like talked to other photographers in the snowboard world, and they were like, hey, you can make an okay living at it. And I was like, yeah, fuck it. Let's do that. So I went back to photo school, and that's really like sort of that shift was like, yeah, this makes me happy. But then I was working at a studio from 06 to 09, 2010 maybe. I hate it. I hardly ever took photos outside for like probably 2 years. I barely shot my own stuff. And then I got asked to shoot a calendar for like a classic car club. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I had owned a classic car at the time. And that was the igniter again. I was like, oh, I love this again. This is great. So that was my introduction to that. And then it was like, dude, it's just like, I don't know, ebb and flow, right? Like sometimes you're on these like creative highs. And Denise and I were talking about this. I think like part of it stems from having to give up the studio space because financially it made no sense. Not no sense. It was absolutely impossible to afford a $12,000 a month space. Like, go fuck yourself. There's no way. I could have a suite in a corporate tower for that here. And I looked at some other spaces, and they didn't tick enough boxes for what they wanted. And I was like, okay, well, I guess my studio days are done. And then, man, I was fine. I didn't have a studio for almost 20 years. Didn't matter. But now that I had a studio, I was like, I like this. I want this. I want this all the time, because you get spoiled. And so I think part of that, like giving up the studio in December and then just kind of like, oh, well, I don't know. I can't just go shoot in the studio when I want. And now, it's anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a day to get a studio here. And I was like, well, do I really want to drop $1,000 on something that's going to be like, meh? So now I'm a lot more selective, which means I'm also getting poopy about not shooting, and it's just this like endless cycle of like, okay, well, I need to do something. Oh, well, I'm going to buy an adapter so I can shoot fucking anamorphics on it. Oh, I'm going to buy a Yashica and I'm like trying to like buy my way out of this creative funk, and it's not doing it. It's not working. So obviously that doesn't work for me anymore. Whereas when I was younger, I was just like, I'll buy a new lens. And then I was stoked on shooting for like a month. And now it's just like, I've tried buying a bunch of shit and it doesn't work. Okay. So I actually just need to like focus on something I want to create and then make that investment. Now, the nice thing is like what I've been shooting lately, it's not fun. It's just not like crazy creative, which is fine. That's the commercial and advertising world. You know, sometimes you're just shooting a jacket on a body in a studio on a gray background with a giant light source so it's soft. And then other times you're doing the stupidest thing that you should never do, but the client wants it, so you try it.
Yeah, I guess you're up and down. You just kind of, in a kind of corporate type of work, you just got to do what they want. You got to deliver the product. I was in a funk a little while ago, and I couldn't find anything I wanted to shoot. Everybody's like, let's go shoot landscape. And the thought of shooting another sunrise or sunset made me want to put a bullet in my head, because everyone, no matter even or compositions are different, they all look the same. And I was just wandering around the downtown core of my town, and I saw a recycle bin with a chain on it, holding it to the wall so it didn't get stolen. And I took a photo, and I'm like, this is it. I'm going to shoot garbage cans. And I just started shooting garbage cans in the alleys just for fun. And I loved it. The colors, the graffiti, the grit, the grime, the dirt. And it made me just realize, like, I just want to walk with my camera, and I just want to capture small moments of time that will never happen again. And then obviously I found abandoned barns and things like that, and anything that can tell a story, I want to capture it. It's not, it's not the generic stuff. It's like, I want to know what happened in that old farmhouse. I want to hear the history of that farmhouse, because it's been around for a couple hundred years, and I want to know about it. And that's what brought me back out of it. It's crazy when you're in such a slump and you were so like fired up the week before, and then you're like, oh, my stuff sucks. I'm very hypercritical. I judge everything I do over and over and over again. I'll post a photo and I'm like, that's it, the best photo ever. And then I'm like, delete, because something wasn't quite right. And now I'm trying to be very, very straight to the point. I'm trying to throw stuff up, and I'm just trying to run with it and not let my brain tell me I need to take it down.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's a good sign, like, as growth as an artist, that you are questioning everything that you're shooting. Because when I was younger, man, I was the best photographer on the planet. Fuck you. I knew everything. You couldn't tell me, oh, my photo sucks. You suck. And it's like I couldn't take any constructive criticism at all. And I was a shitty photographer. But at the time I was like, I'm the best. And then once you realize that you're not good, and that you always have time to learn, and you should always be pushing yourself, is when you grow the most, and probably when you produce the best work. Like I look at stuff I shot like a month ago, and I'm like, ooh, that highlight's maybe like a little too bright. Oh, I wish I had like shifted this over, or this framing's a little weird. And I'm always second guessing everything now. And then the other weird thing that I guess I run into is, so like you shoot a campaign, and sometimes photos come out for like a year. So like we get the product as it's just out of prototyping, and you shoot this big lifestyle shoot. There's no photos from behind the scenes. There's nothing, like, you can do crew photos, but nothing can show the kit. And then it goes to the client, and it just sits in this little fucking vault until the stuff gets released. And I'll tell you, I've taken some photos, and I'm like, oh, this is a banger. This is going to be in my book. And then it comes out a year later, and you're like, I don't like her position in the bar here compared to where, no, I'm not sharing this. And you're just like, your brain is like, oh, I should share this. It's a growing, like, it's a process, and you like should share that, like, that learning curve. But sometimes, man, you like sit on an image for a little bit. Or I think the falsity that we see in social media, that everyone's got to be busy all the time, or everyone is busy all the time. Like, if you're not posting, you're not working. And it's like, no, sometimes you're working a fuck ton, but it's a law office and you're taking portraits of 10 people. I'm not going to post that. Nobody wants to see that. And then it's like, oh yeah, actually I did shoot this incredible campaign down in Vegas. Oh, where is it? And you're like, I don't know. We'll see it next spring, maybe. Dude, I've had one shoot that was for a client, that massive amount of pre-production, huge. It was probably like one of my first like really big sets that I did. And I think there's like 19 people on set with models and stylists and everything else. And I lit it, and we shot And then our director didn't really like the lighting, even though it's what we had talked about for months. And so we changed the lighting up to like make it softer, which didn't make sense for the scene, but cool, whatever. It's your show. And then in post, they're like, you know what? We need it grittier. And I was like, you mean the way we fucking lit it at first? But cool. Yeah. So we like, grunged it up in post a little, like just as much as we could with a big soft light source. And it was out in the middle of the field. Like we brought in RVs for models to get changed into. Like it was crazy. And they scrapped it.
Oh.
So a new art director had come in after the shoot was approved, and it was all in the bag. And he was like, we're not running this. This isn't the message we want. And I was like, but it was the message you had like a month ago. So I sat on that image for like 3 years. And then eventually I like messaged the owner of the company. I was like, can I share this? And he's like, yeah, man, I don't care. And I just couldn't mention the brand, which is cool because it literally like there was no branding in the photo at all. It was just this like lifestyle image of a bunch of people in a field digging with like torn clothing and all this kind of stuff. Would have been cool to have seen that one. I'm still bummed it never like went out anywhere, but I get it. I get our director's point of, what did he call it? Poverty porn, I think is what he called it, because we were like making people feel guilty about buying luxury items from specific areas and the like unfair treatment of workers. And he didn't want to open up that can of worms. And I was like, man, I get it, but there's a lot of work that went into that. Yeah, it's tough. Like when you see that, and now I look at that photo, I was like, that tray could be straighter. Oh, that's like a weird, but it's never ending, right? Like you obviously are your own worst critic. And that's the thing, is we see our own flaws. I mean, unless you're a narcissist, then you have no flaws, but generally like we see our own flaws, and in our photographs, it's the same. So we're like, this is incredible. You're like, see that catch light? It's not really where I wanted it, but this is where we're at.
That's crazy. On a job like that, like when you do all that work and they scrap it, you still get paid. Like you're still collecting on that. You just don't get the benefit of your work being out in public, correct?
Yeah. And if you're nice, you just don't charge them the usage fee. Like you take the day rates and you pay all the crew what they're supposed to be paid and everything else. For me, I'd rather not burn the bridge. So it's like, well, you don't have to pay using it. So don't worry about the usage fees, just cover the day rates and the costs and everything else. Man, I'm a terrible business person. Like I love so many of the companies I work with, and I'm like, oh yeah, we can make that work. When in reality, I should be like, I don't think we can make that work for that budget. But I just love shooting, which is a problem. I don't treat it like a business, which is terrible. Probably a lot more successful if I was a better business person. It's tough to get past fucking loving what you do. That's the problem. You're like, you know what? I would do this for free. I'm like, oh, your grandmother is 87 and you want a photo of her, but fuck it. Just cover the cost of my film and get her to the studio. She can't come to the studio. We got to go to the old folks home. Fuck it. We're going to build a studio in like Nana's kitchen. And, so instead of someone spending $1,000 for a portrait session, they're like, here's your $65. And you're like, cool, but you have to sign this because I really want to share this photo. Like I'm a horrible business person. Horrible. Because I love what I do. And it's terrible. But I think, I guess it's like a lucky position to be in, where if I was independently wealthy, I would still do this. I just would pick what I did differently. I think I focus on people that needed services, and organizations that I supported would probably get a little more free work. But then I'd also just fucking I'd have a studio and I'd be like, it's Bring Your Grandparents Sunday, and you just rip through family members being like, you want some photos? Cool. Like I don't shoot family photos, but I love old faces. The characteristic, or like the lines and the creases and the age that are in people's faces, that's experience to me. And I've had two photo shoots, like two portrait sessions, where they both hated their photo, like hated, because you could see their like crow's feet and their lines, and they were very upset that they looked their age. And I was like, that's a fucking badge of honor, A, that you've made it this far, and B, that each of those, that's a story. Those are years. That's experience. That's shit you've lived through. You should be proud of that. You don't need to be baby butt smooth at, 87 years old. Enjoy that look. And like one of them, we did two looks. We did a safe, like broad lit. So, very soft and front heavy lighting that is much more flattering. And then we did I'm going to light it the way I really want this photo to be lit. And so it was short lighting, a harder rim, and it really, like, the texture with using like a specular light source really shows depth in shadows, or like texture in a face. And she hated that image, but the organization loved it so much they used it for the cover of the book. And I was like, I'm so sorry, but it is awesome. It looks so good. And she didn't like it, but we had that conversation where it was agent experience, and she should be proud that she'd made it. It was she'd had substance abuse issues and was in a program, and she had completed the program, and this photography session was like a gift for that. And so she wanted the broad lit one, which was cool. We printed that and gave it to her, and then that photo, that short lit specular, like silver brawly, like it's still in my book. It is one of my favorite portraits I've ever taken, and that shit's from like 8 years ago. And then the other one was a family had booked me to do individual portraits, so they are like 4 hours from here. So I drove with all my gear set up in their barn and basically shot 4x5 portraits for everyone, because I was still doing large format then. And the mom, like the grandma of the like youngest kids, she hated her photo because she looked too old, and I loved it. I said to her, I was like, this is maybe like one of my favorite portraits I've taken in the last 5 years. And she was like, I look old, I look tired, and I was like, you look like you've lived life. She was upset. Her daughter loved the photo. Her daughter sent it to the mom's publicist because she's a writer. The publicist loved it, explained why she loved it, and then all was good. She loved the photo and she used it for her book cover. It's tough, man. Like, sometimes I'm a stubborn piece of shit and I want lighting to look a certain way because that's usually why people hire me. And then you do the exact thing you want to do, or you think they're hiring you for, and they're like, but I look this way. And you're like, did you not see all of my, this is, I can light it like broad and soft, and sure, it's cool. It just doesn't have the depth. It doesn't have character. Like, man, I think we should embrace the fact that we get old. You're lucky enough to get old. My dad died at 60. I had friends die at like 25. Age is a, I don't know, man. It's like a badge of honor.
It's crazy. I mean, when you think about it that way, I think my dad passed when he was 56. And like, I'm almost 50. We take too much for granted, and we worry too much about having that look that, as seen on TV, the smooth skin. Yeah, polished. I love that. Yeah, I love that old. I hate to say the word weathered because it sounds like I'm being insensitive, but that's what they have. They have that life. They have that experience in that skin, in the texture, in the wrinkles, in the folds. It shows reality. And that's what people need to see more of.
I think it's difficult though, because as a culture, we're shown nothing but beauty all the time. We're shown perfect people all the time. We're shown people that are 75 that look like they're 50 because they have $500,000 in cosmetic surgery in them. And that has become this weird beauty standard, which, don't get me wrong, like, I work with models all the time, and that is a thing. But as you age, to me, portraits are different than commercial advertising and fashion photography. Like, for me, I want to show vulnerability. I want to show experience. I want to show age in a single frame. Like, there's so many people that don't get to make it that far in life that it really is something special. And so for me, I just kind of like, yeah, let's light this way, and let's use a harder edge light, and we're going to do this, and I'm going to put a little LED here. And now, look, this is what you look like. And they're like, fuck no, I don't want to look like that. And like, okay, well, let's take a frame like this. And then, I kill like a lot of the lighting that creates the textures. And I just put a larger modifier on the main and soften it up and be like, all right, turn your head towards the light now. And then you get this stereotypical like soft light portrait. And man, they look great. They really do. They're not my jam. I fucking love hard light. I love texture. I love lighting for like shadow depth. And I think like telling those stories and using, for me, like I said, like a technical aspect to get that look is so fun for me. Like doing the math to get a look that really you're like, well, you could just throw a really hard light here and a really hard light here. And then you'd have that contrast anyway. And you're like, yeah, but using 7 lights is kind of fucking cool. Even in the end, if they're like, I don't really love it. And you're like, oh, you do though. Don't you? No, you don't. Okay, well, let's take, cause I always like Polaroids now because Polaroids are $8 billion a frame for 8x10 and 4x5. Like Instax is only $1, but my like test frames are always with the GFX so they can at least see what they look like. And generally I tether. So I've built a preset in Capture One that is very, very close to what my like pushed HP5 comes out as, so they can really see what it looks like, because it's important, right? They're paying for the service, so it's important that they're happy. But what I want to try and convince them of is to like, let this photo be you, let this be like your legacy, that this is really who you were. When I used to shoot real estate portraits, man, there were like 60-year-old women and men that wanted to look like they were 30. And by the time I was done retouching, like if I had found you online and you had shown up to the house, like, this is not you. You lie. Like, who are you? You're trying to take my money. This is not, did you steal this person's identity? Because their retouching was so heavy. Like it was just plastic. And that's not, just be you. Anyway, that was a really long-winded fucking, anyway, doesn't matter. It's me ranting about not being able to light people the way I want.
The good part about this podcast, Ryan, is like I was saying in the beginning, man, it's a story. I want to hear your story, your thoughts, your feelings on what you do. It's not about me. It's not about hearing my voice. It's about hearing your story so the world can understand where you come from. And man, this has been probably one of my favorites to record so far. To the point where I don't even know if I'm going to edit it. I might actually just let it go because there's just, the flow has been so good.
Yeah.
Just a couple more things before I let you go. Community over competition is something that's big with me and a few others on the Threads platform. And I know you definitely agree with the community aspect over the assholes. We've touched base on it. One thing I've noticed too now is you get these people who gatekeep. They tell the new artist who is amped, they just got their Rebel T7 and they're gonna start a business. They're gonna do no, and they hear, don't do that. You don't know anything. You suck. Just go away. You aren't going to get to the point where you're going to make money. How do you approach somebody like that? That stuff bothers me so much that I just want to rip everybody apart. And it's not the right mentality for me to have. But who are we to tell somebody in an artistic space that their stuff sucks? Art is in the eye of the person. It's not in the eye of Joe Schmo down the street who thinks he's the best at everything. So what advice can you give a kid who's just starting, anybody who's just starting, that really loves this craft, really wants to perfect their skill set, and really wants to turn it into a viable career?
Man, from like a business standpoint, spend your creative effort shooting what you want to get paid to shoot, because shooting fashion, but you really want to shoot weddings, I mean, those two maybe tie in a little bit together, but don't shoot housing interiors if you want to shoot cars. Find what you love. Like, I was lucky, man. I smashed a few passions together and paid my mortgage for a number of years. So I will always try to give that advice is find what you really want to shoot and use your creative energy to make that happen. Now, obviously, take the paid shoots whenever someone will give you that money to shoot whatever it is, because that's the start of your business. That's the start of your revenue. The next thing I will say, and this sounds hilarious coming from an asshole like me, gear doesn't matter, but I spend so much fucking money on gear, man. It really doesn't. Lighting matters more than anything. Like, if that's the one thing I can pass on, I fucking wish I had gotten into lighting earlier in my career, because I only think of, I've been doing this, we'll say part-time since the late 90s, but really full-time since 2006. I could only imagine where the fuck I'd be now if I had learned lighting way earlier than just sort of like in the last 10 years. I was obsessed with having nicer cameras than people when I was younger, and that was my like flex. And now I'm like, I don't give a shit. My 8x10 is the same technology they used 100 and whatever years ago. It's just a modern lens, but that film emulsion's been the same since the 60s. So it's not that part of the tool. It's the understanding of light. If you're getting involved with portraits and that kind of stuff, even if you're doing landscapes, I guess technically it's about light too. Everything's light. It's photons, man. It's just fucking learn photons. And then as for like what to do about gatekeepers, which statistically are men in our demographic, middle-aged white male that have lived, we'll say like a mild life of privilege, usually is where that comes from. And they're just pissy little bitches that are mad that people are coming into the space. And I can say, I will say that, I said that, I guess, just now. I went to PPOC meeting, which was the Professional Photographers Organization of Canada, where the fuck it is, when I just graduated photo school. And I had talked to someone, they're like, oh, you got to go to the PPOC. It's great. It's community. It's blah, blah. And I was like, fuck yeah, I love this. This is great. I want to meet people. And I wasn't in there 15 minutes tops, and some dude walked over to me, and I had a Hasselblad hat on, and he was like, oh, Hasselblad, eh? And I was like, oh yeah. And he's like, do you even own one? And I was like, oh yep, two of them actually. And he's like, oh, well, there's nothing my Nikon couldn't do that your Hasselblad's can. And he just like proceeded to shred the fact that I liked a particular camera brand. And like back then, man, Hasselblads were fucking cheap. Nobody wanted to shoot film at that point, so they were nothing. Like you'd pay more now for an X Pro 1 used than I bought that entire Hasselblad kit for. So Go fuck yourself. But at the same time, he was wearing medals around his neck, like Olympic style medals. And he was telling me that he was the best portrait photographer in Canada and blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, I don't want anything to do with these fucking people at all. This is not all this is a circle jerk where they give each other awards and then they pretend that they're all awesome. And I have seen, and this is a full-time revenue photographer here, I see more talent now than I've ever seen. And these aren't even people generating significant revenue from photography. I'm fucking blown away by what like newer photographers are doing now. And it's, in air quotes, uneducated photographers, because they didn't go to photo school. But you know what? That's amazing, because they don't have the boundaries that we were put through in photo school. Like, yes, there are regulations. There are things that you should probably kind of try to stick to. But sometimes you blow that shit out of the water and you're like, I would have never thought to do that, because that's fucking weird. I would never thought to frame it like that. I would never thought to blow out that. But it looks really cool. Fuck, am I terrible at what I do? And it's amazing. And for those gatekeeping pieces of shit, just fuck them, ignore them. Like, it sucks because there's a lot of them and they're always the loudest one in every social platform. And I have acquaintances, man, that are like that. They're the first ones to shit talk someone. They're the first ones to comment on someone's social. They're the first ones to talk down. And you're like, do you not realize like you literally get to play with a fucking camera for a living? You want to share that experience with other people? I now realize how fucking lucky I am. I also struggled for a long time to get financially like settled in like a level of revenue where I wasn't worried about what bill I was paying. But you're playing with something that people spend money on to do in their free time for free. So be fucking nice and be grateful, but that's not going to happen. We're not wired that way. Jealousy is is a crazy thing. And I still get jealous, man. I see some like the way people can create, and I'm like, fuck, are you kidding me? This is amazing. And then I see people like, oh, you bill $1 million a year and you are mediocre. Good for you though, because you are billing $1 million a year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're still allowed to be annoyed because it's $1 million a year. But I don't know, man, for anyone that's new, just fucking keep up with it. Ignore the idiots. And if you're looking for advice, or you're looking for not even inspiration happens every day through all facets of life. It doesn't have to be photography based. It could be a dumpster chained to a fucking wall. And that's what clicks. And if that's what works, that's fucking amazing. But know that I think you should shoot what you want to shoot if you want to get paid for that in the long run. And then find photographers that you look up to and reach out. You're going to get a bunch of no's because people are busy and their time is worth money, but you'll have that one person. They'll spend some time and they'll chat with you, ask questions, and then try and get out assisting. I paid a lot of money for photo school, and I learned more in 3 months of assisting than I did in 2 years of school. Assisting on set is probably the fastest way to learn. Just don't assist for photographers you don't like their work, because you're not really going to learn much. Try and find ones. Now, you don't always get that choice at the start, I guess. You're going to take assisting where you can take assisting, but eventually try to weasel your way into the ones that you really like and stick around with them, because you'll learn a ton, man. And you'll learn set behaviors, you'll learn business stuff, you'll learn lighting, you'll learn workflow process. Like, there's so much that can really only be taught through experience. And there's a lot of trial and error if you're in it on your own, versus with, like, we'll call them a mentor, I guess, but not really. I mean, not everyone's going to have and or need a mentor, but yeah, just I don't know, ignore those. You can't ignore them because it's social media. Everybody's terrible, but try to ignore them. I take it really personally, less so now than I did before. I did a video with the camera store years and years and years ago about a Pentax medium format camera, and we shot snowboarding and stuff. And that's the most amount of hate I've ever received in my life. And it ruined my life for like 2 months, because I'd go back and read comments and just be like, what the fuck? Well, no, I make my living. Like, do they not know I make my living? Like, it's not like I'm not. And I took it so personally. And then I realized now, I'm like, oh, you know what? Most of those people probably didn't know what the fuck they were talking about anyway. And it's the same, man. Like, you see comments on YouTube videos, and you see replies of people in threads to other people, and you see the hate, and you're just like, you're just angry, and you need an outlet. And what easier target than someone that's new to the industry, or has a different outlook, or a different approach, or a different method to shoot something? Or, hey, I like this camera brand. Huh, fuck you, you're so stupid. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, that's the worst. That camera brand's for rich orthodontists. And you're like, well, I like it. It's my money. Sure, I could have bought 9 Pentax K1000s, but they don't speak to me like this other camera does. And people get so sucked into that. And I don't know, I'm going to go on a gear rant, so we won't do it. Well, I'll just shut the fuck up, because I just find it amazing how terrible people can be. And yeah, some of them just need to get beat over the head with a bag of dildos.
That's amazing. That's kind of part of my philosophy and my plan with the Life of Phys podcast, is to bring in those new up and comers that are just killing it, that don't get the recognition because they're not those top photographers that are on social media. But they, like you said, there are so many people now that I'm blown away. And it's just not fair. Like, let people experience the passion, the drive, the commitment, and be proud of themselves. And it's going to get to a point where it's going to take people like yourself and like me to tell these guys to go fuck themselves. I have no problem doing it. I'm trying to get to a position where I can feed my family from this craft. That is my goal. That is what I want to do. I love what I do. I love taking photos. I have a drive. It may be taking pictures of garbage cans chained to a wall, but I love it. It to me, it was creative and it looked great, and people seem to love it. But we need to get together as a community and stand up and build a group that can fight against the assholes, fight against the people that are like, oh, you shoot Fuji, oh, you have no clue. And I'm not a fanboy. Like I said, I will switch gear left, right, and center. If something seems better for me at that time, that's what I'm going to shoot. I don't have the dedication, but I always end up back with Fuji, so I guess I do have some loyalty. But man, I've appreciated your time. I've appreciated this talk. It's I've got lots coming up, and I look forward to like catching up with you for maybe in a couple months when you're in town. Hit me up.
Yeah.
And we'll
I'm stoked. I've got a pre-light on Monday at the studio. So I was going to throw you got 2 episodes out now, right, on Spotify. So I was going to throw those on because I'm by myself in the studio, just like putting together lights. We got this big like Vanity Fair style group like that Mark Seliger. It's like totally poaching his idea, but these executives wanted something different. And so I've got all day in the studio to just prep gear. So I was just going to throw the episodes on and some other stuff that I like haven't gotten caught up with lately. Cause I have to I can't listen to podcasts while I'm editing because I pay attention to that. And I don't pay attention to like the files. So I'm like, but I can definitely like throw that on and build a bunch of like 600Ds on stands as opposed to like having to focus on something. So yeah, I was stoked to listen because you had Mike. Yes. Is that the late?
Yeah, so I recorded with Mike on Tuesday. That one's scheduled to come out on Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
If I have a chance. But Mike and I are very similar, so it's going to be a tough one to actually edit because we just did this revolving circle. But I met Mike through Threads. He's actually probably one of my favorite people to chat with because, I'm not political. He's super political and he loves to tell people to fuck off. It's great. So the 2 episodes that are out, the first one is with Alfonso Villian. He's a young up and comer here in Vancouver. He's working with a Japanese sculptor. He took some images of the sculpture, and the guy was like, oh, "These are amazing." And so he's given him full authority to sell prints. So he's diving in, fantastic. And then I had iFocus Photo. So Roxana Ortiz, that's Mike's partner.
Okay.
Yeah, so she works. She's a photojournalist for Como 4 News.
Okay.
She's an Emmy winner.
Oh, crazy!
And an ex-military photographer. So I got to learn about her story, and it was, and I got to also learn about the middle-aged white man who decided to tell her she's a liar. She didn't win an Emmy. I want everybody to be willing to come on and chat, and I've got some awesome people lined up, and it's all through Threads. I do everything through Threads because I find that community to be so much more a community. Instagram, man, I could post a naked woman on Instagram and I'd get 4 likes, which is fine because I can care less how many likes I get, how many follows I have. But you post something on Threads and you have people going, "Oh man, how'd you do that?" Or, "Hey, next time maybe turn it a little bit this way and try this angle." Everybody's kind of willing to help. It's like the new kid on the block, right? Everybody wants to get to know them. Yeah. And it's definitely a much more friendlier platform. It's a much nicer place to be. And
yeah, I found that too. Like I put off joining it forever, and then I had a couple friends that were like, "Oh, you should check it out." And I was like, the last thing I need is another fucking social media app, but sure, I'll fucking sign up. And like now Instagram has really, I think I've posted 2 real photos since November and the rest are just like stories. So if people want to see what behind the scenes and stuff, that's all I do. Or I post our dog ripping around in the lobby of our condo, and that's all it is. But Threads I'm on regularly, and it's just, yeah, man, the community, the new like pool of photography that I see, not new photographers, but new to me, because the Instagram algorithm is geared a very specific way. And Threads was just kind of like the Wild West for the algorithm at first. And I was getting people like shooting in Zion, and I was getting the Netherlands. And I was like, I've never seen any of this before. Who the fuck are these people? This isn't, but on Instagram, you're like, I don't get any of this. So yeah, I've been on Threads, like substantially, because it's so much more fun, and like the photography and the portrait work that you see there is amazing. So yeah, I kill way too much fucking time. It's in a section of my phone that is literally called time wasters, because I just get sucked in to it. So it's been great, and it's been so awesome to have like a different algorithm show you more stuff than normal. So yeah, it was cool.
Awesome, man. Well, let's wrap up here. Where can everybody follow you? What's the best place to see you?
I'm most active on Threads, I guess, and I think it's just Ryan HK. Fuck, I don't know. Is that bad? I'm pretty sure Threads is just maybe it's Ryan HK underscore, because I think that's what
I think that's what it is.
Instagram was. Yeah, that's really bad, man. I'm supposed to run a business and I can't remember my social media stuff. Otherwise, yeah, ryanhk.com doesn't get updated very regularly because I'm lazy. I'm not too busy. I'm just lazy. But yeah, the like Threads is kind of like where I've been hanging out mostly.
Awesome,
but yeah,
man.
I had a good time.
Thank you. It was a great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. And let's catch up when you hit Vancouver. And then I'd like to catch up again in 6-7 months, see how you're doing, see what's going on.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Life of Phys Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our show, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you content and the stories of our incredible guests. And remember to stay connected with us on all social media platforms. It's at LIFE_OF_PHYS, or on the internet at www.lifeofphys.com.